Okay, in the last couple of lessons, we talked about a B2B buying process and we walked through what is that buying journey? What are the processes that they go through in order to be able to make a purchasing decision? So, in this lecture, I want to spend a bit of time talking about the social selling process and how to engage with them using the social channels, whether that be, LinkedIn, which is, really the focus of this overall course, or it could be something as Twitter or Instagram or Pinterest, whatever the case is, but leveraging one of those social channels in order to be able to engage with them. And now, social selling as a term has grown in popularity. A lot of people have kind of latched onto that term, and I think it's an effective term, but in many ways, it is a misnomer. And what do I mean by that? Well, it's because of the fact that when it comes to social selling, when it comes to leveraging those social channels in your sales process, you're not closing the deal. You're not doing the transaction on the social channel. In many ways, social selling is about building that engagement, building the relationship, building the trust and the rapport with somebody online, and then ultimately leveraging that engagement and converting into one-on-one offline sales conversations or sales interactions. Okay, does that make sense? So again, I want to highlight, even though the term social selling is there, you know what? There's some subtleties within sort of social selling, and it's not about trying to close the deal over social channels. It's not about trying to facilitate the order over social channels. It's about building that engagement and then ultimately converting that engagement into offline one-on-one sales conversations. And there's some subtleties within sort of social selling practices that you know what, it's important to recognize so that you can build the right first impression and that you can build the right impression online or the right reputation online. In traditional sales processes where, it's done through a phone call or a face-to-face meeting, the first time you meet somebody, you have the opportunity to react. You can gauge your body language or their tone of voice and say, okay, well, that didn't quite resonate so well. So I'm going to make an adjustment here so that when you were done that phone call or that meeting, you walked away knowing that you had built the right first impression. Social, you don't get that opportunity. Very rarely do you get a second chance to make that good first impression. But once you start to build that reputation online where people start to feel that all you're doing is self-promotion or all you're trying to do is sell them something, you build that reputation, people have a tendency to tune you out very, very quickly. So it's important to recognize the social selling process so that you can avoid building that type of reputation and ultimately build the right reputation online and make the right first impression. And as a salesperson, it's an absolutely huge opportunity if you understand the social selling concepts and you have a well-defined process and you leverage that to your advantage. And what do I mean by that? Well, there's a number of different industry stats that have come out, and some of those being that, B2B buyers are typically anywhere between 50 to 65% of the way through the buying journey before they'll actually proactively reach out to a company or a sales rep. So it's important to recognize that these B2B buyers are using these social channels as part of their, information gathering and their evaluation of options and the different steps that they're going through as part of their B2B buying process. So, it's important to recognize where they are and find ways to engage with them. And another key stat, this one's actually from LinkedIn, is that, according to them, 92% of B2B buyers will engage with somebody that reaches out to them if they believe that they're a thought leader or an industry leader. So it's important to recognize that, if you're not having success with phone calls, if you're not having as much success with emails and you want to turn to social, it's important to recognize the process so that you can demonstrate you're that thought leader, that trusted resource, that valuable resource, or that industry leader that they want to deal with, because they're much more likely to engage with you if they recognize you as that. There's no barriers to reach. Having a global presence and having customers all over the world and making those connections with prospects all over the world could not be any easier than what it is today using social channels. And for those that know how to leverage social to their advantage, it truly does give them a competitive advantage. It's the opportunity in order to really separate yourself from your competitors and to stand out from the crowd. And in my opinion, it takes less time than the past. Before, as a salesperson, you'd almost have to build into your cadence the process of touching base with warm prospects or current customers. You would have to find, make regular, phone calls or visits to their office. Now you can remain front of mind with those customers or those potential prospects constantly through social channels with the stuff that you post, the information that you're sharing, or engaging in the conversations that you're in. And it does take less time to do that once you've built some of that knowledge and that understanding on how to go about doing it. As well as the fact that if you do it well, you're going to actually have people starting to reach out to you. They're going to self-qualify. They're going to seek you out and want to engage with you. And ultimately that means that it's much higher quality leads and you get the opportunity to control your own destiny rather than sitting back and waiting for people to just hand you a set of incoming leads that, quite frankly, may or may not be that good to begin with. Okay? Couple of key things as we start to dive into the social selling process is that this process is there to complement what you're doing, your standard sales processes. Chances are you have one that you use on a day-to-day basis, which is, I need to prospect and then I need to qualify and then ultimately, quote, negotiations, close, whatever the case is. This is not to replace that. And I want to make sure that's abundantly clear. This process is to complement and to work in sync with your current sales processes. And the reason why we have these processes to begin with is because it builds repeatable results. It allows you to be able to deliver sort of those consistent results and to be able to have a consistent approach to things. And consistency, quite frankly, is absolutely key when it comes to social and social selling. Okay, so let's talk about each of the steps within the social selling process. And maybe it's because I'm Canadian and we're kind of world renowned for being overly polite sometimes. We have the acronym called PLEASE. And so I'm going to walk through each one of these here, but I actually think that the PLEASE acronym has a couple other meanings as well. First off, if you do it well, I guarantee you that social selling is going to please your wallet. You're going to find new opportunities. You're going to be able to tap into audiences or prospects that you may not have otherwise had you not focused your efforts on social selling. And I think that it's ultimately going to please you because of those opportunities. You're going to be able to hit your numbers much easier. And because of the fact that, the more you do it, the more opportunities are going to be reaching out and trying to, engage with you and proactively sort of self-qualifying, it's going to please your boss as well because you're more likely to hit those numbers on a monthly or quarterly basis as well. Let's talk about, the first letter in the process, which is P, and P really stands for pinpoint. I've always said to people that if there's one thing that you're going to do that's going to be able to up your sales game, it's to be able to get 100% clear and focused on who your ideal customer is. Take the time to truly understand who is it that is most likely to need, want, and be willing and also able to buy what it is that you have to offer. The more you focus your time and effort on that, the more likely you're going to be able to see results. But the more you can focus your efforts in on those types of people rather than wasting cycles, wasting efforts on people that, again, are not likely to buy your products or services and may not even be able to buy your products and services. So as important that is for sales as a whole, it's also important within social selling is to be 100% crystal clear on what your ideal customer looks like. And then once you understand that, is tapping into the areas where they're collecting. Where are they going to ask questions? Where are they going to share information to be able to collaborate with each other? And then tapping into that to not only listen in, but also to learn. Listen to the different terminology that they're using. Listen to the questions that they're asking. Learn sort of the challenges that they have on the go or the types of information that they're looking for. Tap into that and take the time to listen and learn. And then once you have that information, leverage that to your advantage to find a way to engage with them. You know what? Share information that's insightful. Share information that's relevant. Find ways to engage into the conversation based upon what you've learned as to what's important to them and the things that you've learned and that you can bring to the table and leverage that in order to be able to engage and start to build those relationships, create the conversations. And then once you've done that is become an advocate, contribute to conversations, take your experience, take your knowledge from working with other customers and the industry as a whole, bring it to the conversation and help to drive the conversation forward, help to drive solutions and offer up solutions to some of the problems that they're facing. Become that advocate. Remember, we were talking about the 92% of B2B buyers that will engage with you if they think that you're a thought leader or an industry leader. Guess what? Here's a step where you can demonstrate that. Become that advocate for your industry. Become the advocate for the people that you serve. Okay? And drive value to that conversation. The next is secure. Well, you know what? At the end of the day, we're salespeople, and our focus is always to be able to advance a deal, to keep that deal moving forward. So in the social selling process, it's the exact same here. It's nice to have those online conversations or those relationships or those interactions, but it's our job as salespeople to convert those, to secure the opportunity to have a phone call, to secure the meeting, to secure the customer providing you or the prospect providing you their email address so that you can follow up and continue the conversation over email. It's to secure their commitment to attend an upcoming webinar or web demonstration. So it's our job within this process is once we've really, engaged with them and we position ourselves as a thought leaders, the people that we're engaging with, finding a way to secure that opportunity to move it from an online social interaction to an offline one-on-one sales conversation. Okay. And then the last step is really to expand is how do you leverage what you've already built? How do you tap into your existing customer base? How do you tap into your current connections in order to be able to identify new opportunities and to tap into other prospects and other groups and other entities that you can leverage? Or how do you leverage sort of your current connections or your current customers to get the warm introductions or the referrals or even to provide that social proof? So how do you leverage that to your advantage in order to be able to expand your reach and uncover new opportunities and new customers to deal with? Okay. So that's really sort of the social selling process as a whole. And what I've done is I've actually created a PDF form of a downloadable cheat sheet that you can download it from the download section here in the course and print it off. And I welcome you to, post it to your wall or keep it on your desk beside you because it walks you through the different steps in the process but also gives a bit more context to each one of those steps that you can refer back to as you're starting to engage within that. And ultimately, I welcome you to take full advantage of this and leverage the 6 steps of social selling and ultimately to be able to help you create that success using those social channels and the sales opportunities using those social channels. Okay, so be sure to take an opportunity to download that right now. It is a PDF and take full advantage of that. Okay, so what does this all mean? So if you think about it, in the previous lessons, we talked a bit more about a B2B buying process. And we talked about the different steps within that process, the problem recognition, information gathering, evaluation of options, risk resolution, purchase decision, purchase evaluation. So we've walked through the process of the buyer's journey and what they go through in order to be able to make a decision, and then what happens after they make that decision. Now we've talked a bit more about a social selling process. How do you engage with some of these clients or these prospects in using social channels and leveraging the different elements in order to be able to find ways to engage and ultimately to be able to tap into that. The power of all this comes when you can overlay one over top of the other, when you can actually recognize where that buyer is within their buying journey, and then use a social selling process or a step within the social selling process in order to be able to engage with them based upon where they are in the journey. So let me give you an example. As part of your learning, you tap into somebody that you recognize that they're in their information gathering phase of the buying process. Well, what a great opportunity for you to then engage with them by sharing information on different websites that they can check out or different sources of information that they can tap into because you recognize that they're in that step within the buying process. Or maybe they're in the evaluation of options phase where you can engage with them by providing them a white paper that compares the top 3 or 5 different industry solutions, any of those types of things. So by recognizing where they are in that process and then you engaging them with the right way, it's absolute power. That's what separates you. That's what gives you a huge amount of opportunity by recognizing, again, where they are and then mapping how you engage with them and your process in order to be in sync with where they are in the buying process. Okay, makes sense?